CBS, America's #1 independent television network, presents the following sports exclusive.
Stewart with time, lets it go. He's got three people down there. The ball's up in the air. Caught! Touchdown! Caught by Westbrook for a touchdown!
Welcome to Basically a Football Show.
Basically a Football Show. Week 8 in college, Week 7 in the National Football League. We're going to start in college because someone's alma mater had a little trip and fall this weekend.
Did the Rockets lose?
Number 1 in the country still and always the Alabama Crimson Tide, 60 of the 61 first-place votes. They beat Texas A&M in what was a tight game going into halftime. Coming out of halftime, A&M had a lead, 14-13, and that's the last we heard of the Aggies as Alabama turned on its Alabama switch, got a couple turnovers. I think they said during the broadcast that Alabama has scored a non-offensive touchdown in 10 consecutive games.
No kidding.
Outstanding.
Yeah, that's really something.
And the Tide ended up rolling 33-14 over the Aggies. 8-0, 5-0 in conference. Alabama's Alabama.
Last week I said, don't go to sleep on the Aggies. I'm going to change that this week. Go ahead and go to sleep on the Aggies. This wasn't even, I guess A&M did a pretty good job in the first half, but I really kind of had a slight feeling that this might be a little bit closer. But, yeah, Alabama just does what Alabama does and just keeps right on rolling.
Yeah, I turned on the game because I got the notification on my phone saying that, it was 14-13. I said, oh, A&M's in this thing. And, Alabama struggled on its next series, I think, or maybe they took the lead. I don't remember exactly. But whatever happened, the next A&M offensive series, it was a fumbled handoff exchange. And one of the linemen just scooped and scored. It was pretty easy for Alabama and that turned the tide, no pun intended, in that game there. And if with that ability, like I said, 10 games in a row scoring a non-offensive touchdown, that's something that kind of sets Alabama apart from some other teams. Like, yes, their offense is good, and yes, their defense is good, but if their defense and special teams are going to score on you, then anybody's going to have trouble stopping, a team that can do that.
Well, you look at that 10 non-offensive touchdowns in 10 straight games, that's basically a free 7 points they've gotten in 10 straight games. Not free necessarily, but 7 points that you wouldn't expect or count on. They've done 10 straight games. And when they're doing that, I was thinking that it was kind of like maybe Alabama, Ohio State, and everybody else. Right now, I look at college football, I don't know that anybody can beat these guys. I just don't see it. I don't think anybody's quite at their level. It's really one of the most amazing stretches in college football history that you're ever going to see. So if you like Alabama or if you don't hate them, I guess, sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah, there's definitely a group of contenders that we're going to get through right now, but Alabama is just, as you see with the first place votes, somebody keeps giving Michigan that first place vote every week. I don't know who it could possibly be.
Jim Harbaugh. Yeah.
Well, it's the AP poll, but
he's paying someone.
Right. I get what you mean. It's just like there is a group of contenders, and then there's Alabama. And until you beat Alabama, until somebody knocks them off, I have no reason to believe otherwise that they're not going to win the playoff again this year.
Yeah.
But leading that group of contenders now is the now number 2 Michigan Wolverines. They had an easy week, a 41-8 win over Illinois. And for the second time this season, they tried that formation where they lined all 11 guys up behind each other in like a power eye. And they ended up scoring a touchdown from it. So it didn't work the first time, it worked the second time. So the Wolverines still doing what they do.
I don't know what to make of Michigan. Obviously they're good. There's no question about that. But really, and again, this isn't just me being an Ohio State fan or anything. They haven't really played anybody. The one team they played that was actually pretty good was Wisconsin, and they had a hell of a time beating them in Michigan. Other than that, they're running over teams, Hawaii, UCF. Colorado's okay this year. But, you got Rutgers in there, Illinois, Penn State, which I guess I got in a room to talk about Penn State. But I'm still not entirely sold on Michigan. I'm not saying they're not good, but I just don't – I'm not thinking they're quite the number 2 team in the country yet.
Yeah, I hear what you mean. And I think the thing, too, is that even though they're playing, not the greatest schedule, they're beating the hell out of everybody they played except for Wisconsin, and that was 14-7. Otherwise, Rutgers 78-0, Penn State 49-10, UCF 51-14, Hawaii 63-3. All those sort of scores, they're doing what they have to do. It's kind of the same argument that we lobbied against Washington until they had a couple wins, and maybe that Stanford win not as good, because I want to talk about Stanford's game that they played this week when we're almost done here. But they're doing what they need to do, and they go on the road to Michigan State this week. Now Michigan State not ranked anymore, but always a tough game, rivalry game. And then they get another 3 weeks of kind of easy, Maryland, Iowa, Indiana, maybe. And then, there's nothing until they play Ohio State, really.
Yeah.
They still have some time to puff up that record. And we'll see what the committee thinks of them. I think no matter what who they've played, they've still dominated everyone they've played. So I think they're fine.
Yeah, I'm not taking a thing away from them. I think they're definitely a playoff caliber team. I'm just, I don't know that they're quite as close to Alabama. I don't think they're the number 2 team in the country. I got to see them play some better teams. But like you said, really, other than Michigan State, it's cruise control from here to Ohio State, which is fine. I mean, Michigan's in the driver's seat in the Big Ten right now, and that's good. Jim Harbaugh's done a great job. I'm just not fully convinced yet. I'd say I'm 85% convinced, but I want to see them do this against a team that's the same caliber that they are.
Number 3 in the country, moving up a spot, is the Clemson Tigers. They did not play. They finally get that long-awaited showdown with Florida State this weekend that we thought was going to be the big game in the ACC. But it's still not a game Clemson can overlook. Florida State, number 12 in the country. Both teams coming off of bye weeks going into that game. So that'll be one of Clemson's first tests, or I guess second test of the season after they beat Louisville earlier. It's a big game for Clemson.
Sure.
Not anything that they need to be too concerned about, I don't think. I think they're better, clearly.
I think that this is a game that we thought was going to decide the ACC. That's clearly not the case now, but it's still going to be a big game. I mean, you got Florida State's at number 12, Clemson's at number 3. Clemson needs to win. They're in a position now where they've got to go out and be impressive every week to try to maybe overtake Michigan for that number 2 spot. Not that it really matters that much, but anything can happen, and you just got to keep the hammer down. And a big win over Florida State might vault them back into the number 2 spot. You never know.
Right, and for sure that one thing Florida State would love to do right now.
Oh, sure.
To knock off Clemson at this point in the season.
Yep.
We'll see how that works out. Number 4 in the country, the Washington Huskies, still undefeated. They beat Oregon State 41-17. Again, beating up all the teams they need to beat up. They have a tough one. Their first tough game in a little while. They go on the road to play Utah this weekend, and playing in Utah, not easy. So we'll see if the Huskies can pass that road test against the Utes. That'll be a good one to watch.
Yeah, the Utes they've got a history of knocking off teams in situations just like this. They come into Utah, and the Utes say, you know what, not in our place, and send them on home. So that's going to be a big game, too. Good one to watch.
Louisville moves up 2 spots to number 5, still hanging around that playoff. If these aren't the playoff rankings, but they're that first team out as of right now, if these were the playoff rankings, with a big win over NC State. So, that can kind of lead into the discussion of the next team, number 6 in the country, is Ohio State, because they dropped 4 spots after a loss on the road to Penn State, 24-21. Let's talk about the game first. The game really turned on that blocked field goal touchdown to put Penn State in front. And what went wrong with your Buckeyes this weekend, Greg?
Well, I'd love to be able to tell you, but like I told you before we started, I have a story about this game.
Yes.
I was watching it, and I was also watching the Cubs and the Dodgers.
Of course.
Buckeyes go up 21-7. I think, okay, this one's in the bag. I'm going to watch the Cubs because this is historical. First pennant since 1945.
We were all there, yeah.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, so like I normally do when I get mad, I quit watching the game and then something happens. This one, I was like, this one's in the bag. I'm done with it. And I went back and looked, and it was 24-21 final, and I said, what the hell happened? I don't know. I didn't see any of it. I've got to be honest. I was too busy watching the Cubs. But I'll be honest, what I watched of the game, Ohio State didn't play that great in this game. And this is like 2 weeks in a row now that they've had trouble. Is it youth? Is it what? I don't know. But that was one that they couldn't lose. You can't let that game get away, and they did. I'm a little concerned at this point. I thought maybe they were legitimately the number 2 team in the country. I'm not so sure anymore.
Yeah. Well, again, it's troubling, too, because if you're Ohio State, you lose to Penn State by 3 points. Michigan beat Penn State 49-10.
Yep.
So that doesn't look so good, if you're Ohio State to eventually play Michigan. But here's the thing that I want to talk about with them and with Louisville. And as you kind of look at the rest of college football, right now there's the big 4 undefeated teams. You have Alabama, Michigan, Clemson, Washington, all leading their conferences. If the playoffs started today, they'd be the 4 playoff teams. Now the other undefeated teams are all kind of a step down. Nebraska's number 7, but none of us think that Nebraska is a playoff caliber football team. Baylor's 6-0, but they've yet to face the gauntlet of the Big 12, and I'm sure that will break up soon enough. And then you have 1-loss teams like Louisville, Ohio State, Texas A&M even is probably on the low end of that. West Virginia's still undefeated. Boise State, maybe this is the year that you can say that Boise State could make the playoff just because they're an undefeated conference champion sort of thing. But I think with Louisville and Ohio State, where their losses that were kind of early and they still have time to make up for it, can either of those 2 teams, do you think that they can make the playoff with the field as it is?
It's all in Ohio State. Ohio State basically controls their own destiny at this point.
True. Yes.
If they go in, if they run the table, beat Michigan, win the Big Ten championship, they've done all they can do. Then you've got to hope that there's the teams in front of you. There's another team with the loss in there. If everything holds true to form, no. But I think of the 2, Ohio State's got the better shot because to get into consideration, they're going to have to beat Michigan, who's probably going to still be number 2, and barring something crazy, could be number 1 if Alabama somehow trips up along the way. So Ohio State's got the clearer road. They know exactly what they need to do. Louisville, between the strength of conference and all that, they might be on the outside looking in. So of the 2, Ohio State, I think, has got the better shot at controlling their own destiny. They can still get in there with 1 loss. Yeah,
I think Louisville definitely has the hope for somebody else to trip up because with Ohio State still being where it is, it's still the Ohio State-Michigan winner. I think that's guaranteed a playoff spot, like you said. I guess Louisville has to hope for Clemson to lose to Florida State this weekend, or possibly in the ACC championship.
Right.
Hope that Washington trips up maybe this weekend at Utah, maybe down the road in that Pac-12 title game. But I think with the way things kind of are, if one of those teams loses, of the years that we've had the playoff, this is easily the best shot at having a non-conference champ finally move in there. Or don't sleep on Boise. Now, Boise's all the way down at 13.
That ain't going to happen. Just not going to happen.
You don't think so?
No.
That even if they go undefeated and they look at it and say, well, we love ourselves some conference champions, maybe we throw the group of 5 a bone this year?
No, because short of every conference champion from the Power 5 having 2 losses or whatever, it ain't going to happen because you just can't, based on the people they play. And it's no fault of Boise's who they play. They can only play who you put in front of them. Exactly. But it's just not going to happen. It's just simply not. I mean, if you're looking between, say, a 1-loss Washington, a 1-loss Ohio State versus an undefeated Boise State, who would you vote for? I'm voting for Ohio State or Washington just because of who they play. That's the thing.
Yeah, and Boise's been kind of hurt too because some of the teams that were supposed to be ranked later on their schedule have lost, so they lose that extra boost maybe.
Yeah. And
again, the other thing to look out for Louisville, and I guess Houston's not on here anymore. They dropped from the rankings this week, but they still have that game looming too. I don't know. There's avenues for them to get in, but I think right now it's a 5-6 team race.
Yep.
It's clear to see that there are 6 teams for the playoff. Louisville and Ohio State being the 2 on the outside right now, because after that, none of those teams beyond Nebraska are playoff caliber. It's just not there.
I mean, maybe Baylor. Let's say that Ohio State wins the Big Ten. And, they beat Michigan. They win the Big Ten championship. They've got 1 loss. Baylor cruises and goes undefeated. Let's say that Clemson trips up against Florida State, and now you're going to have a 1-loss, at best, 1-loss ACC champion. So it's possible you can see a Baylor slip in there, but really, yeah, once you get past Nebraska, everybody else is pretty much just chasing a good bowl bid right now, barring a whole lot of crazy stuff happening.
And really, for Baylor, getting into the playoff would just be a good bowl bid because God knows that they're going to end up playing Alabama probably.
Yeah.
Getting their doors blown off.
Yep, exactly.
God, yeah, Alabama's got an easy shot at this title game. They're waiting to see who they play on January 15th or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, you still got the Iron Bowl in there, and you never know that can get crazy. But I mean, yeah, you look at it right now. Alabama, I think Alabama and Michigan are in the best shape right now. All they got to do is win out, they're in. Simple as that. Probably
Yep.
Same thing with Clemson and Washington. These 4 teams just keep winning, you're in, and that negates everything else.
Yeah.
So.
Moving on down, Nebraska is still undefeated. They beat Purdue this weekend. They're at number 11 Wisconsin. Now we looked through Nebraska's schedule before. This is when they start to hit the tough part. So hopefully Nebraska, I have no ill will against the Cornhuskers, but they're just not the number 7 team in the country. It's just they're not. So they'll probably lose in this stretch of games here where they got Wisconsin this weekend. Like I said, Baylor's still undefeated. They go to Texas. That Big 12 gauntlet coming up. A&M falls down to 9. West Virginia is still undefeated. They move up to 10. West Virginia is just such an enigma of a football school to me sometimes. I always forget that they're around or that they're in the Big 12. And
they
6-0.
They can make things interesting. I mean, if they are the one Big 12 team that can play defense, you never know. It's I completely forgot what I was going to say, but what were we talking about? Damn, I had a good point to make, and I can't remember what it was now. All right, just keep going. Don't worry about it. It'll come back to me.
All right. Wisconsin drops down with a win to Iowa. They dropped down a spot. Florida State's 12. Boise State moved up to 13, as I said. A tight win over BYU. That's not going to help them in any sort of playoff argument.
Yeah. I know what I was going to say. Do you think that I thought the voters were kind of kind to Ohio State to only drop them to 6?
Yeah. I know it's a tight loss and it's tight loss on the road, but their chief rival, Michigan, beat them by 39 points.
Yeah.
That should have been a worse loss than it was.
I agree.
And I heard the argument that, if you're Ohio State, that no matter what, you're never going to fall that far because the voters love Ohio State. They love Alabama. They love all these teams. And I think in some parts they look at the quality of what's below them and maybe they say, oh yeah, Ohio State needs to move down behind the other top contenders, but they're better than Nebraska. They're better than Baylor. They're probably better than A&M, better than West Virginia on down the line.
Yeah, but I don't think that's fair, though, because in all honesty, Nebraska plays in the same conference Ohio State does. And they're 7-0, and they're behind Ohio State, who's got 1 loss.
Yeah.
West Virginia, I look, believe me, I'm not arguing with it because trying to make up ground from number 6 is a whole lot easier than trying to do it from, say, number 13. But I just thought that the Buckeyes got a real break and only getting dropped down to number 6 in this whole thing.
Well, it's like LSU was... number 3 when they played Wisconsin in the first week of the season?
Yeah.
And they dropped down to like 13.
Yeah, it's just
like that.
I think it's just name brand recognition, honestly. And
completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I just think, and it's something I've argued this with our high school football polls that we do down here, where it's something that I dislike, where it's like, sure, if in theory there's a lot of these teams that are behind Boise State that are probably better than Boise State, let's say. But, Boise, I guess if you have a worse record than one of these teams that like Florida State is 5-2, but they're ahead of 7-0 Boise State. You would in college football, in the college football mind, you think, well, you're undefeated, you should be ahead of these teams. But, the teams that you're ahead of can probably beat you still,
yeah.
Right? So I think this is a combination of, yeah, they needed to move Ohio State down, and they moved them below that top group of contenders, like I said. But they know that Ohio State is still better than pretty much every other team behind them. So they're not going to drop them behind Nebraska just because Nebraska's undefeated
That's
and wait
true.
for Nebraska to lose, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would make that argument that I would say that more than likely Ohio State's better than everybody behind them, although I look at some of these teams and I go, maybe. I mean, A&M I think is pretty good, but I can see the logic for keeping them at number 6. I understand it. And I don't have a problem with it. I just thought it was interesting.
And I think maybe we're finally seeing this kind of leak into the AP poll. This kind of thinking is the kind of thinking that the committee does,
yes.
Right? Where just because you're undefeated does not mean that you get to go up in the rankings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe the AP is finally seeing that too and saying, okay, sure, we'll move down a team if they lose because, they have to. Like, you're not going to move a team up for losing or keep them where they are at, especially at number 2 or 3 in the country. But we're going to keep into account that, yes, they lost, but they are still better than a 7-0 Nebraska, a 7-0 Boise, an 8-0 Western Michigan. Western Michigan's undefeated, but they're only down at 20.
Well, I was just going to say that, like, with Boise State, say 5, 6, 7 years ago, if we're at were we in week 8 now?
Yeah.
Week 8, they're 7-0. They're probably ranked. I'm going to put them up there. They're probably right after Louisville or right after Washington in the old days,
Exactly. I mean, back in the old days, you'd have the top 4 undefeateds as they are now. Nebraska's probably number 5. Baylor's probably 6. West Virginia's 7. Boise's 8.
Yep.
Maybe you even have I don't know if Western Michigan gets up in the top 10, but they're going to be in the lower teens rather than 20.
So I think you're right. I think we are seeing more of the committee mentality getting into the AP voting, which is a good thing, I think, because it always drove me nuts that if you were undefeated, you were ranked higher than everybody else, no matter who you were. I mean, other than a Western Michigan, but if you were a team that had a pretty good reputation as a football school, if you were undefeated, you were up there. Simple as that. And you'd look at it and go, this is nuts. But anyway.
No, definitely. If this is the Kellen Moore, Boise State.
Yeah.
Or Chris Peterson is still there, Boise State, and you know that this is a school with talent, this is a school that's beaten big schools before, then they're definitely up there still. But because this is like a generation removed from that, they're still getting the love because people know what Boise State is and they know what they can do potentially, but they're not on the same level as they were, as you said, that 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, people aren't overreacting to them like they used to. But the thing is, though, that the stuff that happened to them back in the old days is what puts them in a spot now where they can be, when they become undefeated, you go, hey, they've got the reputation. Now we can put them in the rankings. So it worked out for them, but I'm just glad to see that they're not ranked like number 6 because they're certainly not the number 6 team in the country.
Other big movers this week, Auburn jumps up 6 spots to number 15. We kind of forgotten about Auburn because we saw the bad season they had last year, and they kind of got off to a rough start early this year. But they're 5-2. They beat Arkansas 56-3.
Wow!
And Arkansas is a half bad football team themselves.
Yeah, they're pretty good this year.
But Auburn moving their way up, and like you said, they're still looming on Alabama's schedule. Maybe that's the potential pothole down the road for the Crimson Tide.
They're on the road at Alabama this time around, so not quite as much a potential landmine for Alabama, but still, it's the Iron Bowl, and for my money too, the best rivalry game in all of college football, even better than Ohio State, Michigan.
LSU moves up 6 spots to number 19. They beat Ole Miss 38-21. LSU, again, a team that most had left for dead once they fired Les Miles, but they're still 5-2. They're very much in contention for a top bowl game. They're second or third in probably third in the SEC West right now.
Here's my question: since Les Miles has been fired, have they learned how to pass down there now?
I don't know, but I saw Leonard Fournette kill a man last weekend. Poor Ole Miss cornerback was coming up to tackle him, and he was doing the right thing that you do with Leonard Fournette. You try to go low, but he went low right into his shoulder pad.
Oh.
And just got his head, knocked into the ground. It was pretty bad.
The right thing to do is to try to go low. The smart thing to do is get the hell out of the way.
Right. Western Michigan, they knock off those dastardly Eastern Michigans 45-31. They're still undefeated in the MAC.
I'm telling you, man, that we got the showdown coming up. Western Michigan, Toledo, last game of the year for both teams. Should be fun.
Colorado jumps back into the rankings. The only reason I want to talk about the Buffs, 6-2, they're still doing pretty well. They beat Stanford 10-5.
What did Stanford's bullpen give up a bunch of runs in the 7th or what?
Yeah, right. Stanford only got to the number 5, by the way, because Colorado took an intentional safety with 5 seconds left.
Wow.
So Stanford, like we said, this is what I wanted to bring back with Washington. Washington, when they beat Stanford, we said, oh, my God, we thought so highly of Stanford, and Washington just beat the crap out of them. Washington's for real. Stanford, since that Washington loss, has looked pretty garbage.
Yeah, and McCaffrey's not having a great season at all. I mean, he's fallen right out of the Heisman talk.
Oh, yeah. After Washington, they got beat down big by Washington State. They had a tight win at Notre Dame, and then they come back to lose 10-5 to Colorado at home.
Yeah, I think the two teams that I'm most disappointed with since the first couple weeks of the season are Michigan State and Stanford. I thought they were both better than they are, but it was like once the seal was cracked in that first loss, they fell right through the floor, both teams. I don't know what to make of it, but I mean, this is our Stanford Cardinal. We loved these guys, man, and they're just not having a good season at all. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do with Stanford. When I saw Colorado beat them 10-5, that just jumps out at you.
Yeah, I mean, because
Penn State comes in the rankings at number 24.
Penn State.
Penn State, number 24. Yeah.
I think honestly, and I was talking to our Bass co-host Mike about this via text Saturday night. I don't know if I'm upset more at the fact that Ohio State lost or that Penn State gets to enjoy something at our expense. I think it might be the latter. I think I don't like the fact that they're having fun and it's coming at our expense. That bugs me. But
the thing that really kind of drove me nuts was it was yesterday. I was watching Around the Horn on ESPN, and the reporter they had from New York, I think his name's Frank Isola. They were talking about this game, and he's like, "Oh, and you see how Penn State won there with a special teams play." And when Joe Pa was there, that was what they hung their hat on. So that was a little nod to Joe Pa, and I'm like,
"God,
you're kidding me, right?" Like, yes, I understand you're referring it to it in a football context, but you didn't just call him Joe Paterno, the football coach. You called him Joe Pa,
yeah,
and it was a little nod to Joe Pa there. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, look, I think I forget who I was talking to about this over the weekend with Paterno. You can make all the arguments that you want that he was a great coach and all that other stuff, and I don't really, this is not anywhere near the territory we want to be in on this show, but I just want to say this really quick. No. There are allegations now that they knew of Sandusky's abuse going back as far as 1976. And I'm sorry, but if it was covered up, to me, it's just like his legacy is completely shot and destroyed. And that's the end of it for me. And that's what I mean. That's what I think bugged me more about Ohio State losing. I would have rather lost to Michigan than these guys, to be honest. But, yeah it's just, I don't know that you can – I just think you got to be careful. It's tricky territory with Penn State. And the guy saying this is a Joe Pa thing, I mean, fine. You want to make the reference, Joe Paterno – hung his hat on special teams, that's fine. But to give him the affectionate name and all that just to me seems a little bit tone deaf.
Yeah. Last bit from this last week that I want to mention, because I always like doing it. Utah, they moved up those two spots with a big win. They defeated UCLA at home because screw the Bruins. I love seeing you lose. But the thing with the Bruins, I guess Josh Rosen has like nerve damage in his shoulder that they're just like waiting for this nerve to start firing in his shoulder so he can play again.
Oh, wow.
But, anyway.
Well, I just want to pat us on the back one more time. We talked about UCLA way back in the preview. They're overrated. Yep. They shouldn't be this high. And look at them now. 1-4 in conference, 3-5 overall. When are you people going to wake up and learn with UCLA?
Week 7 in the National Football League. Start on Thursday with a pretty inoffensive color rush matchup with the Packers and the Bears. Packers win this one pretty easy, 26-10. The Bears still garbage, but they get Jay Cutler back next week, so that'll be nice.
Yeah, I wonder if that's going to really make much of a difference.
Oh, no, of course not.
I saw a comparison. I never thought about this with Jay Cutler because I always wanted to give him more credit, but I forget who it was that compared him to Jeff George. Remember Jeff George?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, I don't know about that, but, the numbers kind of, you can't get away from the numbers, and they're very similar players, and I thought that's kind of a shame. But the Bears, wow, what a bad season. How about the emergence of Ty Montgomery and Devontae Adams for the Packers?
Sure.
I left 25 points on the bench with Devontae Adams, but I still won my fantasy game, so that's the important thing to take away from this one. What do you think of the Packers in all white?
It looks nice. It's just not the Packers.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way I felt, too.
Like, it looks fine. It's inoffensive, like I said, but the Packers are yellow pants,
Yeah.
You can't change that just because. So we'll move on to Sunday, and we'll start early Sunday morning. I taped this because I was not getting up at 6:30. And it's a good thing I did tape it and didn't waste the aggravation of getting up at 6:30. The Rams looked good for a quarter. They were up 10-0. And then Case Keenum wanted to just keep giving the Giants the football. The Giants didn't do too much with it. They only scored 17 points off of 4 interceptions, the first time the Giants have been a plus in the turnover margin so far this season. Coming into the game, the Giants were -11 in the turnover battle, last in the league, and Case Keenum gifted them 4 interceptions. Giants won in Twickenham Stadium in I think it's North London. It's just outside London. It's a rugby stadium. 17-10.
Once again, Great Britain, we apologize for sending you this.
It looked on paper. It looked like it could have been a good matchup, but didn't end up being that way.
I got to say, with the Rams, I'm not terribly surprised they didn't play well. They were about 14 time zones from what they're used to in this game.
Well, they actually, what they did, instead of the Giants flew out on Thursday, the Rams flew out. They went straight from their game in Detroit last Sunday to London and practiced there all week.
Oh, that's a good idea. Didn't help, but good idea.
Didn't help. Did you see two of the interceptions that the Rams threw were tips. Not all Case Keenum's fault, and then one of them was just one of the most incredible interception returns you'll see, just up and down the field across, good set of blocking, all that sort of thing. But did you see the last interception Keenum threw?
No.
Okay, so they're at the 20. They're at the Giants 20. They're driving, looking for a touchdown. The play before, it looked like they had a touchdown, but the receiver, who was the 5th string receiver that was in there because Kenny Britt had to go out for a play, just didn't turn around to look for the football because he's a 5th string receiver. Then the next play, Keenum drops back and throws a fade to the back corner of the end zone. The Rams receiver does a quick comeback route and just goes 5 yards and turns around. So the Giants corner just keeps following the football and could basically fair catch the thing because Keenum threw it straight up in the air and he's just waiting for it, catches it, takes a knee. And it's that just kind of was the most frustrating thing I've seen.
Go ahead.
Case Keenum day, and Todd Gurley, after an amazing rookie season, hasn't gotten too much going this season so far. 57 yards in this game.
Yeah, he really has. He hasn't had that breakout game yet this year. The talk now, now the Rams go into a bye week, right?
Yeah.
So the talk now is, are we going to see Jared Goff coming up here out of the bye week or not?
They refuse to do it.
Really?
They said they're going to give him some more time in practice with the first stringers.
Oh, boy.
But it just sounds like they're either trying to really baby him along and make sure he doesn't get thrown to the wolves.
I don't think that's it.
Or he's not good.
I think that's it.
Both of them are not great because, if you're babying this guy and you throw him once you finally put him in the NFL, he could, freeze up. Or he's just not good and you wasted draft picks to trade up to get him. And then you get this quarterback that's not good. And then you look at Carson Wentz. You look at Dak Prescott. Hell, the Browns played Kevin Hogan this weekend, and he looked okay.
That's my argument. I don't think it's a matter of bringing Jared Goff along slowly so he can pick things up. I don't think he's good enough because we're not talking about the Patriots or a top-flight Super Bowl contender here. These are the Rams, and again, I think they're capable of going 9-7 this season, but they are a team that, especially when Case Keenum is your number one quarterback, it's not going to kill them to give a rookie a shot. I don't know how it would be any better or any worse, really. It could be a lot better. So I'm looking at it thinking it's Goff. Look, we watched him for 4 weeks in Hard Knocks, and in the preseason he didn't look good, and he didn't seem very bright to me. So no. I'm thinking he's just not good. And wow, but this isn't the first time this has happened where a team's just completely missed on a quarterback. But man. No. When they traded to get picks to get him, that's the problem.
Yeah, and with the thought of bringing him along, it's just become so clear that is a old school way of thinking.
Yeah.
Now in today's NFL, because you have all these rookies that come in and they produce. You just gotta put him on, put him out there and see what he's worth. And because the thing with the Rams is, one way or another, they've hitched their wagon to him. if you miss like this, and if you have a miss like this, to talk about the Browns again, you become the Browns.
Well,
where
it has ramifications for a couple of years at minimum,
Yeah,
at minimum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You could be just like the Browns and spend the next 8 years trying to find your quarterback again.
Yeah.
Never get there.
And the other problem they have, too, is, Sean Mannion may be better. He may be the best option, but you can't do it because you've got Goff, who you spent these picks and money on and everything else. And if you sit Keenum and put Mannion in, that just sends another message like we really screwed this up. So the Rams they're in the proverbial rock in a hard place here. I don't know what you do. Maybe you put Goff out there and see what happens. I don't know, but man.
And that thought with Mannion was one of the reasons that we didn't think that they were going to actually start Case Keenum, because if Goff can't beat out Case Keenum, then what the hell is he doing?
Yeah.
But we were led to believe it's part of the plan. We're babying him along.
I don't buy that.
If you can't play, if you're a rookie quarterback and you put up that many numbers in college football, not unlike Case Keenum. Case Keenum put up big numbers when he played for Houston in college too. Goff's put up pretty big numbers for Cal. But if you go through the training camp in 7 weeks and you get a bye week and you are supposed to be the guy, like Case Keenum, I understand why you don't play him because he was not a top pick. Jared Goff's the number 1 overall pick.
Uh-huh.
If he's bad, then he's going to be bad. And I'm sorry, but you made a bad pick and you're going to have to live with it. But you can't keep yourself in this limbo because you don't think he's ready and you're just going to try to get squeeze the most blood out of the Case Keenum stone as you can. It's clear that Case Keenum, especially after a game like this, he's not the answer.
Well, no, and I do think you're right. It speaks volumes about the Rams that Goff couldn't beat out Case Keenum. He couldn't even beat out Sean Mannion going into the season. He was number 3 on the depth chart. That's just to me, that's a big red flag.
Right.
I don't know, but I don't know that you got anything to lose by going with a different quarterback at this point.
Right. And I mean, you look at the Eagles, right? Before the season, Carson Wentz got injured a little bit, and even then they said, well, we're probably going to sit him behind Sam Bradford. But even Carson Wentz with a slightly injured rib, they felt that he was going to be better than Sam Bradford, so they traded Sam Bradford away, and now he started, and the Eagles are 4-2.
Yeah.
And he was the guy that you picked Goff over.
It's just one of those things where there are just too many examples of it in the National Football League today where young rookie or even second-year quarterbacks come out and they're perfectly fine. Maybe they're not going to be enough to lead you to a Super Bowl, but the Rams weren't going to the Super Bowl either way. It just seems to me that the better option would be to at least give somebody else a shot. And they're not. And it's just like you said, when you're hitching your wagon to Case Keenum, you've got problems.
And really, with the way the NFL is set up now in terms of the money and all that, you don't have time for long-term plans anymore.
No.
Like these investments have to pay off quickly because there's a lot of money involved, especially, and maybe the Rams feel that they're more comfortable in playing a long game because they're playing this interim in the Coliseum and they're still going to get the new stadium and they hope that they can hit the ground running once they get the new stadium, new uniforms, that whole bit. But I don't know if there's a real backbone here. Like if Jared Goff came out and was playing well, I don't expect them to win the Super Bowl first year or even make the playoffs in these first couple of years. If they did, that'd be great. And I'm optimistic that maybe they can, but I don't know. It's a big gamble, and we'll have to see how it plays out. But we spent too much time on a bad football team. We need to move on.
No, but it's a good point to make, though. He's the number 1 overall pick. He warrants a little bit of attention, but let's move on.
Well, they go into the bye. If he doesn't start on the other side of the bye, they're never going to start him this season. That's what it is. Moving on, Colts, they win. They beat the Titans 34-26. Big deal. Adam Vinatieri hits the most field goals in NFL history in this game.
Okay.
Knocks out other Colts kicker Mike Vanderjagt, the idiot liquored up kicker that missed that field goal one time. Still remember that. That's one of my favorite paid men.
I think if you're going to put a kicker in the Hall of Fame, it's got to be this guy because I think there's only 2 others. Ray Guy and Jan Sinnerud, I believe, are the only other 2 guys. But yeah, Guy won 2 Super Bowls with his foot, for Pete's sake. I think that's good enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, my pesky Titans weren't quite pesky enough in this one.
No, just a little short. Saints Chiefs, big in Kansas City. Saints trying to keep themselves alive in the NFC, and the Chiefs still trying to roll along. Chiefs look pretty good in this one. They're able to hold off the Saints charge in the second half, 27-21. Just a good overall game for the Chiefs. Yeah, Spencer Ware looked okay. The Saints put up a lot of offense as they're wont to do, but can't overcome the Chiefs on the road in KC.
Chiefs, this was one they needed to win if they're going to be a contender, and they won. What more can you ask?
Yeah, that's pretty much that.
Yep.
One of the juiciest games on the weekend, of course, was the return of Sam Bradford to Philadelphia. And oh boy, did Philly give him a welcome. He beat the hell out of Sam Bradford in this game. And the Vikings, for the first time all season, just did not look good. The Eagles were able to bounce back and get a big win at home, 21-10. So good look for the Eagles and Carson Wentz to come back and play well. And the Vikings maybe show a little chink in the armor.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you think this is more just a trip up for the Vikings, or is the Sam Bradford Cinderella thing about to turn into a pumpkin?
I think you had a motivated Eagles team against Sam Bradford that, to me, looked a little nervous coming back. And obviously well received.
Going into a hostile Philly crowd, I'd be nervous too.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to take too much on this. It's on the road. It's a team that, through these 6 weeks or 7 weeks now has actually looked to be pretty good themselves in the Eagles. I'm not going to take too much out of this.
And the Vikings weren't going to go undefeated. They were going to lose some games, and this is just a game that they lost to a pretty good team. So I will see. I'm still not sold on Bradford, but okay. We'll see what happens.
One of the earliest instances that I can remember of the 72 Dolphins popping the champagne.
Oh, yeah. I guess so,
Vikings
right?
The team somehow.
Yeah. Oh, jeez, those Dolphins. I mean, guys, come on. Let's move along.
I don't know if they actually did it or not, but they kind of joked about it at the end of the broadcast. And they're like, isn't it a little early? Don't they usually wait till later in the season? And my thought in my head was, no, probably not.
As soon as that last undefeated team goes down, they break it out. I think there's only like 3 guys. It's Mercury Morris and a couple others, but okay.
Yeah. The battle for Ohio goes to the Bengals, 31-17. Browns 0-7. They went on to what is this? Their 7th quarterback during this game?
Sixth.
Kevin Hogan of Stanford fame actually didn't look half bad at times. Made a nice run for a touchdown at some point.
7 games, 6 quarterbacks. That's all you need to know about the poor, hapless Cleveland Browns.
Yeah,
and this is a cautionary tale for the Los Angeles Rams. This is what can happen.
Yeah. The Bengals, though, I mean, not too much to take out of it. The 3-4, but the big thing was AJ Green's Hail Mary catch at the end of halftime.
Yeah,
you see that?
Yep.
It just bouncing all over the place. He's able to reel it in. 8 receptions, 169 yards. Jeremy Hill, 9 carries, 168 yards.
Yeah, Hill had a pretty good game there. What was he averaging? About 20 yards a carry, a little bit less, something like that.
Yeah,
not bad.
Yeah. So just the Bengals took big advantage of their Ohio brothers to the north.
Yeah, and if they'd won a couple of those tough games in the meat of their schedule, they'd still be in the hunt. But I don't think they are anymore, even at 3-4. I think they're really got a big hill to climb.
Here's a question. Are the Lions good? With a 20-17 win over the Redskins, Lions move to 4-3, Redskins fall to 4-3. Matt Stafford has looked really good over the last games. I kind of like what I'm seeing from the Lions. I'm not ready to truly buy in on them yet because there's still a lot of football to play and a lot of teams in front of them. But Lions aren't that bad.
You take where this team was, say, after the first 2 weeks of the season, where I had them down in the Browns-Bears territory. Never would have guessed in a million years by week 7 they'd be 4-3, but they're playing well. Stafford's having a good season, and they're winning football games. And really, that's what it boils down to. I don't know if they're good yet or not. I mean, who have they beaten? The Redskins and
they beat the mighty Rams.
The Rams. They beat the Eagles. So they've won. That's the thing. They started out 1-3, and they've won 3 in a row. Eagles, Rams, Redskins. The Rams, we don't know if that's a good win or not yet, but the other 2 are pretty good wins. So I'd say they're closing in on being good. I'm not ready to crown them just yet, but they've got potential. They're a lot better than I thought they were going to be.
Yeah, I mean, they have a couple tests in the next 2 weeks on the road at Houston, on the road at Minnesota.
I don't know if that Houston game is as much of a test as you might think it is.
Well, no, but it's a team it's a division leader for what that's road. Trust me, I don't think too much of the Texans either. We could talk about them when we get to Monday's game, but yeah. But I kind of like what I've seen from the Lions. Matt Stafford is kind of, if anything, he's been underrated over these last few years. And
I definitely agree with that. I said I agree. He's definitely been underrated. I agree.
Yeah. The Raiders keeping back in the winning way of things with a 33-16 win over the Jags on the road. 5-2 are the Raiders, and Jacksonville. A lot of people missed on the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I think it's really, at this point, let him finish the season, but I think you've got to move in a different direction than Gus Bradley at this point. It's just been a lot of every year. This is going to be the year that we see progress. And a couple of those years, they would come out and you would think you're seeing a little bit of progress. And the next thing you know, you're in week 8 or week 7 and they're 2-4 again. I don't know that it's working.
I don't know if he's a bad coach, but he's just not getting the results that you want.
No.
At the end of it.
And it's good to see the Raiders go out and put a decisive win in their pocket on a game they should have won. It's good to see.
Dolphins win their second game in a row with another big day from Jai Ajayi, their running back. That I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right at all.
That's close.
I think that's right. 28 carries, 214 yards. Again, you're beating the Bills and you're at home, but and you're only 3-4. But a nice couple games there for the Dolphins, and they get the bye coming up, and maybe they put something together or not. Probably not.
I'm going to go more in the or not direction, but Ajayi. Third running back, or is it fourth? Third or fourth running back in NFL history, which is a pretty long time, to rush for 200 yards in a game 2 weeks in a row. The other two were O.J. Simpson, Earl Campbell. There was 3, I think. I can't remember the other one. But, yeah, so he's had a pretty good run here the past couple of weeks.
The other news with the Dolphins, even though he's not exactly known for being a Dolphin, Arian Foster retiring this week.
Yeah.
A string of injuries. It's just one of those things where you just never could get back on track. But when he was healthy and with the Texans, he was one of the better running backs you've seen. I think I saw where his career yards per game, it's like 110 yards per game, is 5th in NFL history.
Yeah, he was a good back when things were working for him. And I was a little surprised that he just kind of packed it up midseason.
Yeah, I think because he got injured again, and it's one of those things where, from what I could tell from his comments, it was just, do I want to rehab this again and come back again and maybe get more time?
Yeah, he's getting up there in years too. I mean, the guy's made some money. Go home. You've done your bit. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Jets beat the Ravens 24-16. Fitzpatrick had some interesting comments after the game, basically saying that the owner, GM, and coach have stopped believing in him.
Well, you've thrown like 35 interceptions in 2 games. What the hell did you expect?
Yeah, Geno Smith actually started this game, tore his ACL, so Fitzpatrick had to come in and lead them to victory. But not the comments you want to say. His career is probably done at the end of this year too.
Fitzpatrick?
Yeah.
I could see him hooking on maybe as a backup down the road, but yeah. And, of course, they lost faith in you, dude. You've been terrible for, the past few weeks. So you got to win this week, but come on. You shouldn't be surprised by any of this, and you should just keep your mouth shut.
And remember when the Ravens were 3-0?
Yeah.
They lost 4 in a row.
One of us was like, hey, I think they're better this year. Well, one of us was wrong, and that would be me.
I would be the one that was right.
Yes.
But, yeah, nice game for the Jets. Not a big deal. Not a whole lot of big matchups this week, so we're kind of some of these kind of quick. Buccaneers beat the 49ers pretty good, 34-17. Jameis Winston, pretty decent game. Jaquiz Rodgers, Rodgers side for the Buccaneers. 49ers still 1-6. Whatever.
Yeah, bad.
Interesting game down in Atlanta where the Chargers and Falcons had a bit of a shootout. The Falcons had a 21-point second quarter. It looked like they were riding high. They were going to start to run away from San Diego. Chargers made a big run at it late. They tied it up going to overtime, and the Chargers win this one 33-30. Big win for the Chargers on the road. Again, a team that has, in all their losses, been pretty much in it. You said that you think that they're better than the record shows. And the Falcons were trying to really prove themselves. And this was a game that if you're at home against a team that's 2-4 at the time, you can't lose one. And the Falcons, that's a bad one to put on their record.
Yeah, all of a sudden the Falcons, we were saying, hey, they might be pretty good. Now they're 4-3. And I think they started out with 4-1. They've lost 2 in a row now.
2 tight ones in a row. They lost, at the end of the Seahawks game, they should have had a pass interference call against them that they didn't get. And then they blow this one late and go to overtime and lose.
But what they've got to do here, they've got to get it back together and get winning, because this can get away from you fast. We've seen this happen with the Falcons before. Good start, rough stretch, and right down the other side of the hill. So they need to pull it back together here. But the Chargers, I tell you, what was their first 4 games they lost in ridiculous fashion?
Yeah.
Any 2 of those they win, and they're in the hunt. I mean, it's as simple as that. I think this team is better than their record is, and they're starting to play and win games. So, you know what? I wouldn't be a bit surprised to see the Chargers chasing a playoff spot at the end of the year.
Yeah, this is the Chargers' second overtime loss this season, or I guess second overtime game this season. One they lost by 6. They beat the Jaguars pretty good. They lost the Colts by 4, lost to the Saints by 1, lost the Raiders by 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only one that, 4 points, 1 point, 3 points, and then a 1-score game that they lost to the Chiefs in overtime. So they're, if the coin flips the other direction, they're in contention for a playoff spot. But look out, they're at the Broncos this weekend, so we'll see how that one turns out. And they did beat in San Diego on Thursday night last week.
Yeah.
So
that's right. This is that weird thing where they play each other like twice inside of 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, I'm not going to say they will, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they're chasing a wild card spot at the end of the season, because I think they're better than we think they are. And, Phillip Rivers is a good quarterback.
Well, and, outside of that Broncos game, after they play the Broncos this weekend, it's Titans, Dolphins, Texans, Bucks, Patriots. They still get the Browns second to last week of the season.
Yeah, they could get in it.
There's a big slate of winnable games.
Yep.
Big slate. In a game that was supposed to be, the headline of the week, Patriots-Steelers, ended up being tighter than I thought it was going to be, but the Patriots still do what they do, and they win 27-16. Landry Jones, not a bad day, but not enough to get the Steelers, close to the Patriots at the end of it.
LeGarrette Blount, 24 rushes, 127 yards, 2 touchdowns.
I hate that.
I don't even get that.
I hate that.
It's just
like the amount of running backs that the Patriots have just grabbed off of scrap heaps,
right,
and turned into like the best backs in the NFL is insane. It's infuriating.
That's just so Patriots that happened. Yeah.
Infuriating. What was really infuriating this weekend is a football game that set the game back about 25 years.
Oh, my God. It is so – go ahead. I'll do my rant after you're done.
Did you watch the entire thing?
Did I watch all of it?
Yeah.
I watched enough of it to be like just – I don't even know what to say about it. Yeah.
Seahawks, Cardinals. Cardinals kicked a field goal in the second quarter. Cardinals also had a field goal blocked at some point in that first half. The Seahawks don't score until 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. 3-3. Go to overtime. Cardinals kick a field goal. Seahawks kick a field goal. 6-6. And then when the Cardinals hit a goalpost, then a minute and a half later, the Seahawks completely shank a 19-yard field goal. And I don't know, man. I just don't want to watch football anymore after that.
This game reminds me of a game, and this game has always stuck with me for years and years and years because of something that Don Meredith, I don't even know if you know who he is. He was a Monday Night Football guy back in the 80s, said.
Right, yeah.
I believe it was the Cardinals, again, and I want to say the Giants played in this just horrible Monday Night Football game that ended in a tie, but it was 20-20. But he said at some point in overtime, maybe justice will prevail and neither of these teams will win. That's how I felt watching this game. It was so awful. Just such terrible. And don't let anybody try to sell you great defense, any of that nonsense. This was just bad football all around, period.
No, it wasn't good defense because here's some of the stats, okay? The Cardinals, Carson Palmer, 342, Russell Wilson, 225 in the air. The Seahawks were held to 52 yards rushing. The Cardinals ran for 132. David Johnson, 33 carries, 113 yards. You just look at the stats, and Arizona outplayed Seattle when it comes to pure statistical numbers, but they couldn't capitalize when they got in the red zone. They had a couple bad penalties against them. They just missed a few times, and I don't know. It was just, I knew what the score was before we started watching it. My grandfather's a Cardinals fan, so he tapes the games, and I told him, I'm like, look, once I saw what the final score was, I'm like, we're not sitting down and watching the entire game. It's like, why? It's a 6. He's like, why? Did they lose? Because he doesn't like knowing what the score. And my grandma's like, it was pretty bad. He's like, what? Did they lose? And I said, no, they didn't lose. Did they tie? Yeah. What was the score? 6-6.
It was just a horrible, horrible football. And not only that, but they have got to fix this ridiculous overtime. They've just got to do something about it.
Right, because if the overtime rules were as they were, Arizona would have won.
Right. And
maybe it's just because we see a game like this and it doesn't happen all that often. But if that increases the amount or the probability that we could get a tie, it's not something that I want to deal with.
No,
ultimately.
No, it's what was, did we have a tie last year or the year before? I don't remember.
The last one was 2 years ago. Panthers and Bengals.
Yeah, but
it was like 37-37 though. That was exciting.
Yeah, but this has just got to stop. I mean, especially like this. If you'd had college overtime, somebody would have won this game, and that'd be the end of it.
Yeah, this
was just horrible, horrible football, and the Cardinals have no excuse. I mean, geez. Palmer, 342 yards passing. David Johnson, 113 yards on the ground, and you can't score more than 6 points? Come on.
Yeah. And the other reason this is going to get a whole lot of attention is because it was the Sunday night game. And I know you guys talked about the ratings last week, and it's been a topic throughout the league. But one of the reasons that it was put forth is that we've had some bad primetime matchups, and something like this does not help the case.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Just terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible.
Yep.
On the Monday night, where it wasn't that much better, but at least you got some points out of it, the Broncos beat up Brock Osweiler in his return to Denver 27-9. Again, not a well-played football game by any stretch of the imagination, but the Broncos get a win that they probably needed to get back on track there, 5-2, and the Texans fall down to 4-3. That's all I got. Anything else you want to say here, Greg, before we get out of here?
Go Tribe.
Go Cubbies. Dude, I understand your reasoning for rooting for the Indians, but everyone outside of Northern Ohio is rooting for the Cubs.
We'll gladly wear the Villains hat for this one. That's okay.
It's just such a weird thing to have the two longest droughts, and it's not like the second longest is like 25 years. They're both equally pretty long.
The thing about this World Series, too, is usually when there's the potential for a matchup like this, we never get it. One of them ends up tripping on the way there. Super Bowl, Stanley Cup, whatever. You never get the one where you go, that would be the coolest matchup. We actually got it this time, which I think is pretty neat.
That's basically a football show. Follow us on all of our platforms. We'll catch you next week.